Into our second session, it's the evolution of network automation. Zero-touch operations has been a rallying cry, but the reality has been falling short of the vision. Telcos aspire to autonomous networks that self-optimize and self-heal, yet most remain stuck at level 2 automation as measured by the TM Forum. The gap between autonomous network ambitions and operational reality threatens transformation business cases. So how do operators bridge this divide in a practical way? So that's what we're going to discuss for the next 45 minutes. Let's meet our panelists. And again, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting at the far end. Beth.
Oh, hi. So I'm a longtime telco person, worked for Verizon for many, too many years, but also did a bunch of startups as well. So I have kind of the both sides of the telco and the startup mentality.
I'm sure a lot of people recognize you from our programming over the years as well, Beth. So welcome to Windsor.
Colin Evans, currently with HPE Networking, which recently acquired Juniper Networks. Previously at Cisco, Alcatel, Nokia, to name but a few. Been around the telecoms industry for 37 years.
Okay, excellent. Welcome. Anita.
Anita Döhler, CEO of the NGMN Alliance. We are an operator-driven global alliance, and I also used to work for operators, vendors, and consulting companies in the past.
Okay, George.
Hi, George Glass, the CTO of the TM Forum. I've been in that role for 8 years now, and prior to that, I worked in BT as the Chief Systems Architect.
Okay, welcome. And Francesca.
Francesca Serravalle, VodafoneThree, and Head of Network Automation, part of Business Strategy and Transformation team.
Okay, welcome back. So Francesca is our DSP co-host for the session. So before we start the panel discussion, I'm going to ask Francesca to go to the podium to deliver a few opening words. So Francesca.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I will start with a simple question. Is autonomous network possible? Yes, it is. We know what we need to do. We need to automate detection, decision, and action, and we know what it's required. We need to go from machine learning to Gen AI to agentic AI. The next question is, can us as operators realize the vision of autonomous network? I would say it depends. If we treat it as technology evolution program, we're set for failure. If we treat it as multi-year business transformation program that span process, technology, and people, we are set for success. What we need to do is to have an approach that is business-led and value-led. It means that we need to start with a clear map of our pain point across the network lifecycle and a clear opportunity across the service lifecycle. And as we know our pain point and our opportunity, the next thing is for us to build up a use case roadmap and prioritize based on a value-risk framework so that we have a clear governance on how to scale. There are few enablers that are important for us to invest. Before we become AI-driven, we need to become data-driven. And this is, I think, was the point of the previous panel. We have a great data, but we need to make them high quality, integrity is key, accessible, and security. So data lake, as well as a data platform that leverage on data management to solve those problems is really key. The other challenge that we have is adoption, so change management. is key again, and I will touch on a few points. It's about transforming the process. This is not a process mapping, it's transforming the process and drive adoption as well. Just creating synergy between AI and humans in the loop. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Francesca. Okay, so thank you for that introduction. So we've already heard a reference this morning to levels of automation within network operators, and so that might be a good place to start, because we hear a lot about this. And this might be a good way to get into this. Where do networks sit today on the TM Forum's 0 to 5 or autonomy scale? Where do we need to be and where do we want to be in a couple of years' time? And I feel it's only fair, George, to start with you, because from the TM Forum, and you must see, I guess, or be constantly looking at a lot of what the operators are doing and where they are on this journey, to use that word.
Yes, the work that we've done with autonomous networks, it started out by defining the automation levels from level 0 through to level 5, which was like manual operations to full autonomy. We also developed an AN level evaluation tool to allow our members to go in and assess themselves where they were in terms of levels of automation and levels of maturity. You don't do it across the whole network, you do it for particular scenarios. So you subdivide your network into a set of scenarios which represent business processes that allow you to manage your network, and you measure the levels. And typically what we're seeing whenever an operator goes in and does their first sets of AN level evaluations, they get a score something in the region of 1.5 to 1.8. And most of the operators that we talk to have an ambition to achieve AN level 4. So it's a full level of autonomy that's got AI, it's got our concepts such as intent-based operations, closed-loop controls, and other capabilities designed and built into the network from the outset, but they're not there yet. And to transform your network, it's a bit like eating an elephant. Where do I start? Which is why we come up with the concept of the scenarios, subdividing the network into a set of domains, subdividing the domains by technology, so you can go after each area point by point. But those individual transformational journeys lead to an overall transformational outcome. But typically, as I said from the outset, when a member measures their initial automation levels, they're scoring in the high 1s, or at best low 2s to start off with.
Okay, so that's interesting, because especially in the last few months, I've heard a lot of talk about level 4, but we'll come to that. Now, Beth, this is a topic you've been looking at for years, long before the AN levels, but it's always good to have a measurement. Where do you think that the telco sector is in terms of actually achieving measurable levels of automated network operations that actually make an impact?
And I think it is an important distinction to understand that machine learning and AI are actually not 100% in alignment. I think a lot of people kind of get them mixed up. And I think the telcos have been working on the automation side for many years. I think that was mentioned in the previous panel. And so I think many telcos are struggling with the concept of, well, okay, it's all about automation. Where does this AI stuff fit in? Where does they understand machine learning. That's pretty straightforward, because it's an extension of automation. But AI is predictive, as was mentioned earlier, and that's a hard concept for many telcos to really wrap their heads around.
And do you think that's maybe halted some of the processes? There's a lot of rethinking going on, do you think?
I think there is a lot of rethinking going on, and of course, again, as was mentioned in the previous panel, there's the proof of concepts, which you always have your best data scientists and network engineers working on, and then when you roll it out to real life, let's say they're not the best people in the world that are actually required to make this work. So I think it's important to understand that part of what needs to be put into these equations is high level of automation so that it can work for the junior network engineers that mostly populate the telco's workforce.
Okay. And Colin, you must be seeing quite a lot of efforts in terms of network automation at the companies you work with. Where do you think we are in terms of the progress here?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting discussion. I mean, networks are absolutely becoming incredibly complex. Networks, and let's also not forget that when we're talking about multi-domain, we're not just talking about the network, we're then talking about the compute layer, the virtualization layer, the applications that sit on top. All of those things need to be coordinated. You're talking about networks which have potentially hundreds of thousands of physical connections, virtual connections, and then on top of that, you have potentially millions of flows that you need to manage. So that complexity is without doubt, something that is almost beyond the human's ability to understand and to visualize. So we're absolutely seeing people using automation to address those kinds of issues. The other thing is humans make mistakes. Humans get tired. Humans are fallible. They get distracted and they make errors. And most of the network outages that are caused by human error in people misconfiguring things. And tools don't make those mistakes. Yeah, of course, tools have to be designed correctly and built correctly so they don't make mistakes, but tools don't make the same mistakes that humans make. So I think we're seeing a huge amount of work on use of automation to try and alleviate some of those things.
And are you seeing operators set goals and talk about levels of automation that they're at in particular domains?
I think each operator has to be will be different based upon where they are, and there's a huge amount of organizational change that needs to happen as a result of these kind of automation journeys, and depending upon the maturity of the organization depends on where they'll be on that journey. So yes, they're all trying to move from I think as George mentioned, from level 1 dot something to 2 dot something, but whether they're ready to move to level 4 is another issue. Maybe that's a few years away yet.
Okay. Francesca, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Are you beyond 1.8?
We haven't done the formal assessment. If I have to give my opinion, I would say we are beyond, we are around 2, and we are incubating capability for achieving level 3, which will probably be within a few years. I believe a lot has been done using traditional machine learning, time series analysis for automating detection. For example, we are leveraging machine learning where we correlate market data, network data, and consumer data to drive smart investment decision. We're using machine learning a lot to drive like an AI-driven energy management where we have a platform, an energy platform, where we ingest the meter data, traffic data, config data, billing data, and we automate the energy forecast, we automate energy optimization, and we automate also the billing validation as well. So energy probably is the one where we are quite ahead in terms of innovation. Of course, I think most of operators, they're using machine learning to do churn analytics, identify likely churners and do some targeted campaign. And we are also incubating Gen AI into our business process, for example, especially financial process, to leverage on unstructured data like PO, invoice, contract, and realize the vision of zero dispute. This is something we are doing. We're using Gen AI to automate HLD and LLD, create blueprint architecture, and we treat it as a transformation program, as I was saying before. It's not just a POC, like proving that the technology works. This is more like an MVP. We make hypotheses on the business outcome, and then we make sure that it's achieved so that we know we can build a business case for scaling. So yeah, I would say we are preparing for level 3, incubating capability, GenAI, data lake, data platform, analytics platform, those enablers that are investment and that we will see, as DT was saying, is the use case that deliver the business outcome and the ROI, but still it's important that we invest on the key enablers that are key for both level 3 and level 4.
Okay. And Anita, I mean, the NGMN, this is an operator industry body, so, you know, and in the different focus of work that you do, automation obviously impacts pretty much all of it. You know, what kind of conversations do you have at the NGMN? What are your members talking about in terms of the importance of automated networks and where they are in that process?
So we are an operator-driven alliance. We also have vendors and academic institutes in NGMN. And of course, for the operators, we already started in autumn 23 with the Cloud Native Manifesto. For the operators, one important part is as a precondition for autonomous networks to achieve cloud native maturity and to achieve cloud native interoperable networks. In addition, so what we discussed and what we also published just recently is a framework for operators how to move to agentic AI-based operating models. And this is not in competition with TM Forum's work, so we cooperate, to be very clear here, so it's complementing it. And in this work, the team used as a baseline the CNCF's cloud native maturity models and added dimensions like people, processes, so people skills, processes, governance, and technology, of course. And provided a framework with 5 different levels, starting from a very baseline automation, very simple use case examples like AI supported documentation to truly autonomous, scalable networks. And I think this is reflecting, so the fact that our members, everything that we are doing in NGMN, as with for most industry alliances, is membership driven. So if our members put an effort in this work, then it means that it's important to our members, to operators specifically, doing this. And one important item is, of course, to always ensure that the impact is measured. So to be clear what actually is the business objective, also this relates to Francesca's speech. What is the business objective? What do I want to achieve? Is it energy efficiency? Is it network efficiency? Is it to improve MTTR? All those different aspects. And I think it's a complex subject. I also liked a lot what the first panel outlined, and also that it's hard to measure the impact of technology enablers, but it's important to find a way to do that.
Yeah, it's also important as well to identify all of the building blocks that enable these processes to happen. And Beth, I mean, you've been working a long time, at Verizon, but with different industry bodies on the development of, all the way back to NFV, orchestration. Which are the building blocks that are required right now at telecom operators to enable them to even think about getting to a point where they can have almost zero-touch automated networks? I think a lot of people are talking about level 4 where there is still some human involvement. Nobody's talking about the level 5, the completely dark network. But level 4, hearing a lot more about, plans, trials, certain things going on, including in Europe. What's actually needed to be able to put these things in place?
So I personally think level 5 is unobtainable at this moment, but there are plenty of building blocks that I think many telcos have already put in place. Orchestration and of course the conversion to virtualized networks and cloud. That that whole data layer and versus the network layer, which went in place, I guess, about 10 years ago, has really, started sort of that revolution that has really caused a ripple effect through the networks to allow that high degree of automation. And I think there's also, business process looking at, we're not really, in this particular panel, we're not focusing particularly on the BSS piece of things, but the BSS piece is actually super important for the automation process because, the order flows in. I'm actually working on that particular process right now, so I'm acutely aware of that real disconnect between, the order coming in and then the automation of the setting up the network on the other side, and how there's like, oh wait, we still do that by hand, and why? So obviously looking at the automation tools is not enough. It does really need to look at the workflows and making sure that these workflows, there are a few obviously that probably need to never be automated, but I'd say the vast majority can be automated and should be automated. And that silo effect of, the business people do this and the network people do that. And, you need to break that down. You really need to say, oh, there's no reason why we can't automate this. And I have this conversation with people every day.
Okay. And George, obviously, the TM Forum must be looking at all of these building blocks and seeing what is mature enough to help automation to occur in certain domains. Are there areas that are far more advanced in terms of maybe orchestration platforms or intent-based networking? There's been a lot of focus on that in the past few years, and there's a lot of platforms out there enabling that. What are the key building blocks that you would say are ready right now for network operators?
So we've certainly seen things like intent-based operations, which uses generative AI as being something that's coming to the fore, and people are starting to implement solutions that are, you describe the outcome as opposed to describing the technology that you want to use to deliver the outcome. Closed loop controls, which use predictive AI, so doing the anomaly detection and the automatic error correction and the feedback loops. Those are mature areas that lots of our members are developing solutions around. The intelligent orchestration, where we're starting to see the use of agentic AI, that's still at the test phase. But that doesn't stop you actually starting to build solutions that use intelligent orchestration that's based on rules and data to actually deliver much more favorable outcomes. And the final thing I want to say is that really what we're seeing in terms of the overall transformation of the business is that what we're trying to drive through the TM Forum is the concept of an autonomous enterprise. The IT and the network are actually both now software engines within the organization. And the skills needed to manage those two domains that were separate for many years but are now coming closer and closer together are actually converging. And we need people who've got a deep understanding of networks, but also a real appreciation of software engineering and pattern matching and abstraction, merging those two together, add in the data scientists and the AI capabilities, and you can start to build an autonomous enterprise. But you've got to think of it differently. This is not redesigning the processes that you have today. This is taking a step back and reimagining, how do I deliver service to my customers using new capabilities, using new technology, and using the latest AI that can be embedded into the processes, into the components that delivers a ground-changing, earth-shattering experience to the members. And I'll talk about some of the numbers that you get later on.
Okay. So we're seeing some themes already here, the importance of bringing the different teams within the operators together. Is that something that, VodafoneThree, I mean, obviously you're a new company, still integrating two teams, but trying to do that really quickly. Have you come into this integration, with all of this in mind?
I think it's a very important point because IT is owning the enabler, the data lake, the data platform. So obviously the requirement comes from business and network, and IT is build the enablement platform as well. So we're seeing more and more synergy. If I have to look at the key enabler in our journey, and if we agree that the definition of L3, it's achieving domain autonomy and level 4 cross-domain autonomy. I always like to simplify things. So I'm going to simplify 5 years of program now. The key enablers are for level 3, it's about having domain orchestrator that automate the resource provisioning and network function provisioning, and then the IOP that assure those resource and network function, which can be localized within the domain. And I think the main challenge we have is, what do we automate first? Is it the run, or is it the transport, or is it the core? That is the first question that we need to ask for L3. Level 4, it's end-to-end automation, cross-domain, so we need the service orchestrator to translate services into network policies across domain. And we need the federated AI agent and the orchestration that you were talking about. I leave intent aside because that touches a very complex thing. It's more like next generation BSS, where users access, a catalog-driven marketplace, set their intent, that is then translated to a service policy from the orchestrator. So that will be the key enabler. Looks like simple, but it's actually a very, very complex journey to navigate. Okay,
and we'll come back to domains and which one to choose in a minute. But I want to ask as well, in terms of the way that VodafoneThree is approaching this and the Vodafone Group, how much of this is being done in-house? Vodafone has been using the word Telco for a while now as the way it's evolving as a company. How much of this development is happening in-house, and how much are you working with the suppliers that have always been on the roster?
I think it's mainly a co-creation activity with partners, where we try to use our data science to drive MVP using agile methodologies, and a squad that is multifunctional, data engineers, data scientists, and UX developers. So we have our own team to build and create this culture of innovating fast and failing fast, basically, like the cloud provider do. But we, as I mentioned before, we also believe this is a multi-year transformation program, and we're working with partners to help us understand where we are in these journeys, the assets to be, what use case makes more sense to prioritize, what is the right value realization framework that we should use in order to decide what to scale. It's all about governance and framework, so it's more like helping us to adopt the right transformation journey, but then we leverage in our in-house skills to drive execution speed and innovation. Okay.
Colin, are you seeing a lot more of this co-development and much more sort of tighter integration in the processes between HP and your customers?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the co-development model is one we see very often. I think, going back to the earlier point about closed loop automation being the thing that actually delivers what the intent suggests. So the intent is created to obviously say what the network is meant to do at a very high abstracted level, and then the closed loop automation is the thing that actually delivers that and moves us from wherever we are, 2 point something to 4 point something. So I think that closed loop automation is extremely important. But the other point I'd make is the cross-domain aspect of this, because I think we think of domains sometimes as bits of the network, like the access layer or the core layer or the edge. It also extends vertically as well, and by that I mean it starts with a service that starts on a container, which sits on a compute node, which is then connected to a local network inside a data center, which is then connected across the wide area. So that cross-domain, we should also think of it not just in that horizontal sense of the parts of the network, but also in the vertical sense of how the whole thing then needs to orchestrate. And by the way, workloads are not static, they're defined from one point, but they move around all the time. And we need to have automation capabilities in a cross-domain sense with closed-loop automation that follow those services as they move within the network. Equally, they could be delivered by multiple parties, so it's not just on a single network, it can be on a multi-operator network as well in certain cases. So I think that's equally important.
Okay. So, key to all of this, I think, has been mentioned. This isn't just, a technology process for the sake of it. There are targets here, there are goals, there's reasons for doing this. Anita, what kind of conversations happen within the NGMN about, what can be achieved through automating different parts of the network and different processes at your members?
I think it really depends on each individual operator with regards to how they put the priorities. It can be energy efficiency, network efficiency in general, cost optimization, MTTR. We have 17 operators, so that's why we typically keep it more generic when that's to some extent, of course, natural, but to the other extent, of course, we also need specific examples and best practices from operators. But I just would like to echo what was said, that one of the main outcomes of this work, the recent work done on agentic AI-based operating models, was that it needs a cross-domain and AI-literate teams to really collaborate in the teams and to have a very clear way how to measure the outcome. So, and different use cases are listed there. But when it comes to priorities, I think it really depends heavily on the situation of the specific operator and the region the operator is operating in.
So, Francesca, do you have a sense of where you might start? You mentioned different domains. What are the key dynamics here? Is it a business focus as much as anything, a return on investment based on particular parameters?
There are a few key activities that we're going to drive as we're going to invest 11 billion on the network. Obviously, we want to do it in the best way, so we're going to introduce automation in the network deployment, fiber and cell site deployment, automating the life cycle or plan, design and build through automation of HLD, LLD, and then during the build phase, you can do progress tracking, schedule of work, and then automating the audit as well, using like even video agentic. So that is something that is a high priority for us. And the second one is ticket resolution. It's a really complex activity because you need to leverage network data, service data, customer data. You need to access network system, customer system. It's about really linking network operation and service operation, OSS and BSS, and it takes a lot of time. So yes, the KPI is mean time to resolve, number of calls to resolve it, but I think the business outcome, it's better customer experience and operational efficiency, both of it.
Okay, and in a very measurable way? I mean, something that can be taken to, I guess even into regulatory filings to say this has been achieved. Would it go that far?
I think it would be great. I can't say now how we will be able to track it, but it has to be, I think, value realization requires measurable business outcome. And this is key for us to be able to scale. Scaling is the most difficult part. You can do MVP in 2 months, really, like small scale. But then for scaling, it's about, embedding in the real business process, driving adoption, creating a proper blueprint architecture. It's not a beta product, but a proper scale. So I think the value realization, business outcome measurement, it's really, really key. Whether we will be able to bring it to the regulator, I don't know, but it has to be like what customer impact are we going to deliver through this? Okay. And what business outcome in terms either cost reduction or service agility or time to market. It has to be a very clear business outcome from the metrics and KPIs.
And Beth, from your experience at Verizon, is there a specific network operation that gives a very clear and deliverable return on investment, one that can be, that needs to be top of the list, and maybe is already delivering measurable returns?
Yeah, for sure. So if you really, it's I talked about the business workflows, from, quote to delivery, or quote to bill, as is normally referred to in the industry. And at the very beginning, the biggest ROI is speed to the provisioning, which is often the most expensive part because you have to do a truck roll and you want to minimize that as much as possible. And so, you can do a lot of things with AI, figuring out, minimizing the number of truck rolls that you do, automating a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes. So that's an area that gets, really should get a lot of focus for return on investment. And at the other end is billing and SLAs, because SLAs can cost a lot of money. And they tend to be expensive to manage because there's a lot of people involved, and meeting our SLAs can obviously be great ROI, and not having to pay out credits is even higher ROI. So I'd say sort of the two ends of the process is probably where you get the most return on investment.
George, I'm sure that you must have, this is maybe where these stats are going to come in.
Yeah, so as I said, we divided the network into 55 scenarios. We then asked our members for those scenarios, A, did we have the technical solution that was capable and possible to implement today? And B, which of the scenarios would deliver the highest return on investment? Where was the most problematic area of your business? And from those 55 scenarios, we identified 22, which we called high-value scenarios. And for those, we've developed technical solution packages, working with the members for the patterns for how you implement those solutions. The highest value scenarios, as voted by the members of the TM Forum, are, and for no obvious reasons, fault management, because there's lots of manual activity, there's lots of customer dissatisfaction if you've got faults, service assurance, and energy efficiency. For the fault management, it actually goes across all of the domains. So in the IP, in the core, in the access, in the transport. And whenever you actually look at fault management in those domains, and I think it's been touched on already, it's not just constrained to the network. Because obviously if you've got a fault in the network, it affects the customer experience, it affects the engineers' workforce and their activities. And therefore joining all of that up is actually where you get the transformation. And what we're actually seeing is the members who have implemented solutions at scale. So I'll talk about, I had the pleasure of visiting Guangdong region for China Mobile, where they've got a solution that's been implemented for IP fault management. They've achieved a 50% reduction in mean time to repair. They've reduced their total number of faults raised by 15%. And they've automated 5,500 people's worth of activities with agent activities. They've rolled this solution out to 300 million customers. This is not a proof of concept. This is not a pilot. This is in production, in their NOC, delivering tangible business value to China Mobile. And I'm seeing that pattern repeated across Asia and starting to come into Europe as autonomous networks are being implemented following those patterns.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. It's great to have that use case and those stats. You know, this is something that can really make a difference. Obviously, China Mobile has massive scale there, but you know, that means that things can actually happen and make a difference. Colin, do those use cases tally with what you are hearing from your customers? You know, what kind of metrics are they looking at? What are they hoping to get in terms of ROI?
Well, I think the one that George just mentioned around fault management and fault remediation is probably the best one today that's potentially using the closed loop model where it's a real hands-off, virtually no human intervention type of model. So yeah, I would completely concur with that one. The other ones are around things like change management and change configuration in the network. And a good example I'd give there is rolling out software updates. I mean, there's potentially tens of thousands of devices that run code in these, let's not even call them networks, let's call them the cloud, if you will, because it also includes, you know, virtualized and containerized devices. It includes servers, storage devices, etc. So rolling out those software updates is another one that we very much see in terms of change management. And then the final one is obviously service provisioning. How do you provision a service? Once a service is defined, it's much more easy to automate the provisioning of that service, and again, use a more of a hands-off approach.
Okay, excellent. Now, this is so let's talk about fault management. This is my fault in terms of my time management, that I didn't factor in a time for Q&A from the audience for this panel, because we've only got a couple of minutes left and we've got another session going live, streaming live from the far side of the room in a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to ask our panel members here for a quick takeaway thought to end this panel on what they would like to see in terms of what could be automated in 2026 and 2027. What should the priorities for network automation be in the next couple of years, starting with you, Beth?
Let's see. I'd say coordination across the millions of devices, actually, to keep them in sync, and using AI to help drive that.
Okay, great. Colin?
Just don't be constrained by supposed milestones that other people suggest you should be at. Do the things that make sense for your organization, the things that deliver the most ROI, and take a step-by-step approach. If it takes several years, it takes several years, but try not to do it too quickly and make mistakes.
Okay, Anita?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, everything what we do is to generate customer value, and we need to have the customer value in focus, and then depending on the biggest areas of impact for each single operator, that needs to be tackled first.
Okay. George?
You don't have to build from level 2 to level 3 to level 4. You can actually jump from level 2 to level 4 if you follow the technical solution packages that we're publishing with our members.
And Francesca?
We built the enablers. We have network customer and service data centralized, is to start correlating those data to have a demand-led network expansion, a user-led network optimization, and a fault management that correlate, like you were saying, the customer data and the network data, OSS and BSS data, basically.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much to our panelists. We do have to wrap up there. That's all we've got time for this particular session. We have a break now of about 30 minutes. We're back at 11:15 a.m. UK time for the final morning sessions. For those watching online, the extra shot program with Tony Poulos is coming up. in just a matter of minutes. For those here in Windsor, the pinball tournament resumes. Don't forget that. The coffee cart is open again, and nibbles are being served out in the foyer. Any questions you had for our panel, please grab them during that coffee break. Let's have a round of applause for our panelists.